When this CEO walked into a small cafe undercover, he thought he would just be trying the coffee. But what he got instead was a chilling cry for help slipped right into his hand. David Brown is the founder and CEO of Java Bloom, a coffee chain that started as a single humble shop and grew into dozens of bustling locations across the state. To the world, Java Bloom was the picture of success, warm, welcoming, the perfect spot for your morning fix. But beneath the shiny surface, David had a gnawing feeling that something was fundamentally broken. The quarterly reports looked good, profits were up, but the stories reaching his ears told a different tale. Whispers of impossible workloads, ignored safety concerns, a corporate culture that felt increasingly distant and demanding to the very people who built the brand on the ground. Customer reviews, once glowing, were hinting at declining service, rushed interactions, a loss of that signature Java Bloom warmth. His executive team, insulated in their offices, assured him it was just growing pains, isolated incidents. But David couldn't shake the feeling that the soul of his company was eroding. He founded Java Bloom on passion, on caring for both his customers and his employees. And the disconnect between the polished reports and the unsettling whispers was becoming unbearable. He needed to see it for himself, unfiltered, without the corporate lens. He needed to feel what it was like on the front lines, to understand the reality his employees faced every single day. So, he made a bold, risky decision. Dye the hair, shed the suit, craft a simple backstory. He would go undercover, back to where it all began, a busy Java Bloom location far from headquarters, a place where no one would expect David Brown, the CEO, to be standing in line for coffee. He wasn't just looking for bad customer service. He was searching for the truth, the pulse of his company. And he was about to find something far more urgent and terrifying than he ever could have imagined. David Brown, the man whose face graced billboards and business magazines, meticulously erased himself. The sharp lines of the CEO blurred into anonymity. He added a few days of stubble, perfected a slumped posture, and adopted the wary, slightly hurried gait of someone just trying to get through their day. He was no David Brown, the polished executive. He was now Dave, just another guy needing a coffee break. He chose a Java Bloom location miles from his usual routes, a busy mid-morning rush in a neighborhood where he was sure no one would recognize him. Pushing open the glass door, a wave of artificial cheer hit him. The generic upbeat music, the overly sweet smell of flavored syrups, the low roar of the espresso machines. It looked like a Java Bloom, but it felt different, strained. The line snaked back towards the door. Employees moved with a frantic energy, their smiles fixed, their eyes revealing a deep weariness. He watched them, each hurried movement, each clipped exchange. This wasn't the relaxed, friendly atmosphere he'd envisioned. This felt like a production line. When it was his turn, he stepped up to the counter. The young woman behind the register, her name tag reading Elena, met his gaze with a practiced, almost robotic, "Next." Her eyes darted past him to the queue behind. Dave muffled a voice, trying to sound casual. Yeah, just a medium black coffee, please. Anything else? Pastry? Muffin?" Elena asked. "No, just a coffee is fine," Dave responded. As the transaction processes, a loud, impatient voice from near the espresso machine barks out. "Elena, you got a mobile order backing up. Hurry it up." Elena visibly flinches, her shoulders tightening. She forces a quick, shaky nod towards the back. "Why, yes, Mark. Be right there." She quickly pulls Dave's card, hands it back, and shoves the receipt towards him without a word, turning immediately to the next customer, her cheerful facade cracking under the pressure. David's stomach churned. Mark, likely the shift supervisor, hadn't just been firm. He'd been openly demeaning. Elena's forced composure, the nervous tremor in her voice. This was the reality behind the reports. His employees weren't just busy. They seemed stressed, scared, pushed to their breaking point. He took his receipt, the cheap paper feeling flimsy in his hand, and stepped aside, ostensibly to wait for his coffee. But his mission had just become clearer and far more urgent. He wasn't leaving until he understood what was really happening in his Java Bloom. Dave found a small, out-of-the-way table, ostensibly waiting for his simple black coffee. His eyes were scanning everything. The frantic dance behind the counter, the expressions of the customers, the subtle interactions between staff. The initial rush was settling slightly, but the tension in the air remained thick, almost suffocating. He saw a customer politely asking about their mobile order, which Elena's supervisor, Mark, had barked about earlier. The barista handling it, looking overwhelmed, snapped back, "It'll be ready when it's ready, ma'am." The customer recoiled, looking shocked and annoyed. Dave winced. This wasn't the customer service Java Bloom was built on. He watched Mark, the supervisor. He wasn't just directing. He was policing. His voice, even when not shouting, carried a constant edge of impatience. "Faster, people. We're not paid to stand around." Or, "Clean that spill immediately. What are you waiting for?" Employees visibly stiffened whenever he came near, their forced smiles stretching thinner. And then he saw Elena again, the barista who took his order. She was moving like a machine, her movements efficient but devoid of any warmth. Her eyes, when they weren't focused intently on the task at hand, held a look of exhaustion and quiet desperation. He noticed a fresh smudge of dirt on her apron that hadn't been there before, a small detail that spoke volumes about the relentless pace. Elena finishes preparing the medium black coffee. She snaps the lid on with practiced efficiency, scribbles a quick mark on the cup, just to check, nothing more, then glances up. Across the counter, Dave waits, unassuming, oblivious. "For now," Elena called out, voice steady but edged with something beneath. "Medium black." Dave steps forward. Elena extends the cup. Their fingers nearly brush, but beneath it, her other hand moves. A flicker, a shadow, too fast to notice, too deliberate to be accidental. The exchange lasted less than a second. A transaction like any other. But in the split instant their eyes met, he saw it. A fracture in her mask. A silent scream behind those tired eyes. Then contact. Not just the heat of the coffee. The crinkle of paper. Hidden. Given. Her touch was gone before his brain caught up. Her body already angled away, shutting him out. Dave freezes for a half-breath. Doesn't look down. Doesn't dare. Just nods, mutters a flat thanks, and turns casual toward the condiment stand. But his grip on the cup is too tight. No reaction. No hesitation. Rule 1. Never let them see you know. He drifted toward the sugar packets, pulse roaring in his ears. Whatever she'd passed him, it wasn't a tip. His left hand dips into his pocket. The note unfurls in the dark. A shaky scrawl, ink smudged from haste. "Help me." And just like that, the mission wasn't about surveillance anymore. The realization hits. The coffee shop chatter fades into white noise. Somewhere behind him, Elena doesn't look his way. But the message is clear. Someone was watching, and she just handed him the only weapon she had. A cry in the dark. "Help me." The world seemed to narrow to just those two words. "Help me," scrawled, desperate, slipped into his hand in the middle of the morning rush. This wasn't in the corporate audit playbook. David Brown, the successful CEO, felt a jolt that was part shock, part adrenaline, part fear. "Help me." Who? Elena? The barista who just served him? Why? What was happening here? Was it a real cry for help? Or some kind of elaborate, twisted prank? The thought was cynical, born from years in the cutthroat business world, but it was immediately overshadowed by the look he'd seen in her eyes, the palpable stress in the air. His mind was a whirlwind. Every CEO instinct screamed caution. His disguise, his mission, everything was about gathering information undetected. Intervening, acknowledging the note, would shatter his anonymity. It could expose him, alert whoever was causing this distress, if it was real, and potentially put both him and the employee in a more dangerous situation. Walk away, analyze later. That was the safe, strategic play. But then, his gaze fell upon Elena again, lost in the frantic rhythm behind the counter. He remembered the flinch when Mark barked at her, the sheer exhaustion visible beneath her professional facade. The human part of him, the part that built this company on connection and care, roar to life. How could he ignore this? How could he stand by and pretend he hadn't just received a desperate plea from under his own roof? The decision point. Right now, standing in a busy coffee shop, holding a cup of his own coffee, a crumpled note burning a hole in his pocket. Does he crumple the note, walk out, and launch an investigation discreetly from corporate? Or does he take the potentially explosive risk, blow his cover, and step into whatever unknown danger or crisis was unfolding right here? The tension in the air outside of himself was nothing compared to the internal pressure building in his chest. In that moment, David Brown stopped being just an undercover CEO gathering data. He became, first and foremost, someone who had been asked for help. The analysis, the strategy, the cover, it all faded. A line had been crossed. He knew, with absolute certainty, that he couldn't walk away. He had to find out what "help me" truly meant. And he had to do it now. The decision was made. He wouldn't walk away. But rushing in blindly wasn't a plan either. He needed information, fast. Why did Elena need help? What was happening behind the polished facade of his own cafe? David, the CEO, engaged his strategic mind, but now fueled by a raw, human concern. He found a vantage point where he could watch her discreetly. She was still working the counter, her movements quick and efficient, the picture of a good employee. But now, knowing what he knew, he saw the cracks. The way her eyes constantly flicked towards Mark, the supervisor. The way her shoulders tensed whenever he came near. The quick, nervous way she tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. And Mark, the supervisor, moved like a storm cloud, leaving a trail of hurried, anxious energy in his wake. Dave watched him interrupt employees, criticize loudly, and demand impossible speed. It was a pattern of intimidation, a stark contrast to the respectful culture David had always strived for. Dave edged closer, pretending to browse merchandise. He strained to catch snippets of conversation. He's been like this all week. Don't make eye contact, just do the work. Did you hear what he said to Elena earlier? The whispers, the stolen glances among the staff, confirmed his fears. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pervasive atmosphere of fear, orchestrated from the top within this location's hierarchy. Then he saw it clearly. A rush of customers hit. The espresso machine sputtered, slowing her down. A customer, already impatient, complained. Before Elena could even respond, Mark was there, his voice low but laced with venom. "Fix it. Now. Are you trying to run off customers?" Elena visibly wilted, her face pale, her hands shaking as she fumbled with the machine. The "help me" wasn't just about general stress. It was about this specific, targeted pressure, this constant barrage of intimidation. His blood boiled. This wasn't acceptable. This wasn't the Java Bloom way. He had built his company on respect for the people who served the coffee, who built the relationships with customers. And this man, this supervisor, was systematically destroying that, one humiliating interaction at a time. The note wasn't a vague plea. It was a direct cry for rescue from a hostile environment. He had seen enough. The investigation part was over. He knew who needed help, and he knew, unequivocally, who the problem was. Blending in, gathering more evidence that felt irrelevant now. Elena was suffering right in front of him, and the time for subtle observation was over. The time for the CEO to step in was now. Mark, the supervisor, was running this location like a tyrant, crushing the spirit of the very people who kept Java Bloom running. And Elena's desperate plea for help echoed in David's mind, a constant, burning reminder of what was at stake. He knew he couldn't wait any longer. And then came the breaking point. A rush of customers hit the counter. Elena, already visibly exhausted, was juggling multiple tasks. A customer's order ticket slipped to the floor just as Mark walked by. What the hell, Elena? Seriously? Can't even hold onto a simple ticket? That's going to mess up the whole flow. Get together. Elena flinches hard, her face crumpling slightly, a mix of exhaustion and fresh humiliation flooding her eyes. She quickly bends down to grab the ticket, fumbling with it. "I'm sorry, it slipped." Excuses, excuses. Just do your job right. You're slowing everyone down. David watched this from a few feet away. His eyes narrow, his jaw tightens. The casual facade is gone. His posture straightens. This isn't just observation anymore. It's protective fury. He felt a surge of white-hot anger. She was clearly overwhelmed, trying her best under ridiculous pressure. And this is how she was treated? Right in front of customers? In front of her colleagues? The "help me" note felt less like a distant problem and more like a physical weight in his own chest right now. He couldn't stand by and watch this abuse a second longer. Dave takes a decisive step forward, moving directly towards Mark and Elena at the counter. The other customers perhaps look over, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Other employees behind the counter freeze, eyes wide. He walked directly towards them, cutting through the small space, his presence radiating a sudden, unexpected authority that made heads turn. He stopped a few feet from Mark, his voice calm, but carrying an unmistakable steel edge that immediately drew the supervisor's attention away from Elena. "Hey, that's enough," Dave said with a steady voice, commanding attention. "This is a staff matter." "But out," Mark retorted. Dave steps closer, ignoring the dismissal. He looks directly at Mark, his eyes holding a depth of knowledge that doesn't match his disguise. He doesn't shout, but his words carry immense weight. "No, I don't think I will. What I see is a good employee doing her best under ridiculous pressure, and a supervisor treating her appallingly. That's not a staff matter. That's a leadership failure." Mark's face hardens, moving from annoyance to aggression. "Listen, you want your coffee? Take it and go. You have no idea how things work around here. I run a tight ship." Elena looks up, bewildered, hope and fear flickering in her eyes as she sees someone defending her. Other employees exchange nervous glances. Dave quips, "Oh, I think I have a pretty good idea. A tight ship doesn't involve public humiliation and breaking your staff spirit." She looks like she's about to collapse. Why isn't she getting a break? Mark lets out a short, harsh laugh. "Breaks? During the rush? We're slammed. Nobody gets breaks when we're short-staffed. Handle it or get out. That's the rule." Dave's expression hardened further. The Dave persona is almost completely gone now. It's David Brown, CEO, seeing the fundamental principles of his company being violated. "That's not a rule of my company," he says. "Every employee is entitled to a break. And they're certainly entitled to be treated with respect, even during a rush." He turns to and says, "Elena, step away from the counter. Take 5. Go get some water. Now." Mark burst into an immediate outrage. "Who the hell do you think you are, telling my staff what to do? You have no authority here." The noise of the coffee shop seems to fade for a moment, leaving just the two of them locked in a silent battle of wills. Dave's expression is unwavering, calm, powerful, decisive. He doesn't need to reveal his identity yet. His command is enough. "I have all the authority. I need to see that people are treated properly in my facilities. Elena, go." "I mean it." Elena, after a moment of stunned hesitation, looked from Dave to Mark, seeing the absolute resolve in Dave's eyes. She nods quickly, a flood of emotion crossing her face, and without another word to Mark, maneuvers quickly past them both, heading towards a staff area or break room. Mark stares after her, then back at Dave, his face a mask of fury and disbelief. He's been publicly overridden by a random customer. You can't do that. I'll call security. I'll have you removed." Dave takes a step back, creating a small distance, his stance firm. He looks Mark up and down, his gaze cutting. "You could try, but I suggest you take a good look at how you treat the people who work for you, Mark, because your shift is about to get a lot more complicated." Mark's face is contorted in disbelief and fury. "Who the hell do you think you are? You can't just walk in here and start giving orders to my staff. I'm the manager. I'll have you thrown out. This is my store." Mark's bluster bounced off David like water off stone. The fury in the supervisor's eyes met a gaze that was suddenly, terrifyingly calm. The hoodie, the jeans, the scruffy appearance, they were just a costume. Beneath them stood David Brown, the man who had poured his life, his vision, his very soul into creating Java Bloom. He had seen enough, heard enough. The time for playing Dave was over. The other employees behind the counter are watching, frozen, their initial fear giving way to confusion as they witness the dynamic between Dave and Mark. The air crackled with tension. Every eye in the immediate vicinity was fixed on the two men. Mark, red-faced and shouting. Dave, quiet, unmoving, radiating an authority that felt completely out of place for a random customer. They were waiting for Dave to back down, to argue, to shout back. But that's not what happened. David speaks. His voice isn't loud, but it cuts through the ambient noise, clear and resonant. There is no more hiding, no more pretense. You want to know who I am, Mark? You want to know what gives me the authority to tell your staff when to take a deserved break, to question the way you manage this location? Mark opens his mouth to retort, maybe a scoff, but David doesn't give him the chance. His gaze intensified, locking onto Mark. Look closely. Look at the person you just threatened. Look at the person telling you that how you treat your employees is unacceptable. My name is David Brown. Mark's eyes widen instantly, his jaw goes slack. The color drains from his face. The bluster collapses like a deflated balloon. He looks like he's been struck. The name hung in the air. David Brown, the founder, the CEO, the face on the company website, the signature on their paychecks, the man whose vision created the chairs they stood on, the machines they operated. Mark's world didn't just stop, it disintegrated around him. The other employees' eyes snap open, looks of shock, disbelief, and dawning comprehension spreading across their faces. Whispers ripple. Some gasped softly. A stunned silence fell over the immediate area around the counter. Customers paused, confused, then curious, following the gaze of the staff. Elena, just returning from the break area or hearing the commotion, appears in the doorway, her eyes widening in utter astonishment and recognition. The random customer in the hoodie wasn't random at all. He was the boss, the ultimate boss. David steps slightly closer to Mark, who is now visibly trembling or frozen in place. You've been running this location based on fear, Mark. You've mistreated your staff, created a toxic environment, and driven people to such a state of desperation that one felt the need to slip me a note begging for help. That is why I'm here. That is my authority. David glances briefly, kindly, towards the other employees, including where Elena might be, and for the rest of you, for Elena, for everyone working under these conditions. I saw you. I heard you. What's been happening here is not what Java Bloom stands for. And it stops now. David turns his full, commanding attention back to Mark, his voice unwavering. Mark, your employment with Java Bloom is terminated, effective immediately. Gather your personal belongings. You will be escorted off the premises. The district manager will be here within the hour. The remaining employees behind the counter are in a state of stunned silence, watching as Mark is guided towards a back exit by a security guard who arrives quickly. Elena is standing slightly apart, looking overwhelmed but also wide-eyed. In the stunned silence that followed Mark's removal, the air in Java Bloom felt different. Lighter, perhaps, but still thick with the residue of fear and disbelief. The man in the hoodie was gone. In his place stood David Brown, the CEO, his disguise shed, his true identity an undeniable reality. He let the moment hang, letting the shock settle. David turns his attention to the remaining staff. His expression is no longer stern, but calm, empathetic, and holds a weariness from what he's witnessed. All right, everyone, take a deep breath. What you've been dealing with, it stops now. HR is on their way to help transition the shift and talk through everything. I'll be staying here for a while myself. His gaze softens slightly as it sweeps across their faces, landing finally on Elena. Elena, Leo, could you both join me in the back for a quick conversation? I'd like to talk to you privately. He led them away from the main counter, finding a quiet corner that offered a sliver of privacy amidst the lingering tension. Elena looked pale but resolute. Leo seemed a mix of nervous energy and tentative relief. They sat down, the silence stretching for a moment, different from the earlier tension. This one was heavy with unspoken experiences. David sits down, leaning forward slightly, his posture open and sincere. He looks directly at Elena, then at Leo. First, thank you. Thank you both for staying, for working so hard under impossible conditions. And Elena, he turns to Elena specifically, his voice softening further. He reaches into his pocket and subtly pulls out the folded note, placing it gently on the table between them. "Thank you for this." Elena's eyes fix on the crumpled note, and tears immediately well up. Leo looks at the note, then at Elena, his expression understanding. Elena, in a quiet, trembling voice, quipped, I didn't know what else to do." David responded, "You did exactly the right thing. You were incredibly brave. That note, that's what opened my eyes completely to how bad things had gotten. I saw bits and pieces, felt the tension, but helped me that cut through everything." Elena, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, looks at David with a mix of gratitude and residual fear. He watched us all the time, yelled about everything. We couldn't take breaks, even to just get water. He said if we weren't constantly moving, we weren't working. It felt like no matter how fast we went, it wasn't enough. Leo nods, adding hesitantly, "Yeah, he timed us. How long it took to make a drink, clean a table. Said if we fell behind, we were lazy. People were scared to even talk to each other unless it was about an order. The stress was constant." David listens intently, his expression one of deep regret and empathy. He takes responsibility. "I let that happen. I got caught up in reports, in expansion, and I lost touch with what was happening on the ground. My job is to make sure you have the support and the environment you need to do your jobs, and clearly, I failed. That's on me. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. But we're going to fix it. Immediately. Mark is gone permanently. HR is bringing in an interim manager who is focused on supporting staff, not tearing them down. We're going to revisit staffing levels to make sure you're not running yourselves ragged during rushes. Breaks won't just be allowed, they'll be mandatory. And I want feedback systems in place where you can raise concerns without fear of retaliation." He looks at Elena, then Leo, a small, genuine smile finally touching his lips. "And for the two of you, for your resilience, for your commitment, and for your courage today, I want to make sure your efforts don't go unrecognized. Elena, your bravery in writing that note took incredible guts. It saved this location from continuing under that kind of leadership, and it reminded me of what Java Bloom is supposed to be about. I'd like to offer you a promotion to lead barista, effective immediately, with a significant raise." Elena's eyes widen further, fresh tears of relief and shock falling. She can barely speak. "Mr. Brown, I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you so much." David then turns to Leo. "And Leo, you stood up quietly but firmly. You didn't look away. That kind of integrity is invaluable. I'd like to offer you the opportunity to step into a supervisor training program. You already showed leadership today by speaking up. I think you have a future here. This would come with a pay increase and expanded responsibilities if you're interested." Leo looks stunned, then a slow, hopeful smile spreads across his face. "A supervisor program? Me? Wow, yeah, I'd definitely be interested. Thank you, Mr. Brown." The tension is melting away, replaced by genuine relief and a sense of being seen and valued. Elena quietly reaches out and lightly touches the note on the table. Leo looks around the now quieter cafe with a newfound sense of possibility. The conversation continued for a while longer, quiet promises exchanged, a foundation of trust beginning to form in the aftermath of the crisis. David listened to their experiences, their ideas. The cold, corporate CEO was gone, replaced by a leader who was remembering why he started all. Elena's brave two words had done more than just ask for help. They had sparked a necessary change, a turning point for this Java Bloom location, and perhaps for the company as a whole. David Brown, no longer in disguise, remained on site, not in an office, but walking the floor, talking to employees, his presence a constant, visible promise of change. Over the next few days, the transformation was undeniable. David stayed, actively involved, personally overseeing the implementation of new procedures. More staff were brought in immediately to ease the crushing workload. Mandatory break times were enforced, met with sighs of relief from tired employees. The air behind the counter shifted from frantic pressure to focused efficiency. Resources that had been withheld or mismanaged under the previous supervisor suddenly became available. Elena, stepping into her role as lead barista, moved with a newfound sense of purpose. Her earlier exhaustion was still there, but eyes that had held desperation now held determination. Leo, embracing the supervisor training, showed quiet confidence as he helped organize the flow. The "help me" note, born of despair, had become the catalyst for empowerment. The shift wasn't just internal. Customers noticed too. The hurried, stressed interactions were replaced by genuine smiles and attentive service. The warmth that David had built his brand upon, the soul of Java Bloom, began to flicker back to life in this location. David Brown left that Java Bloom location a few days later, leaving behind a team no longer crushed by fear, but empowered by respect. The crisis sparked by a two-word note had forced a reckoning, a reminder that the strength of any company lies not just in its profits or its brand, but in the well-being and value of the people who make it run. This story is a stark reminder that sometimes the people at the top need to listen to the voices on the ground, no matter how quietly they're calling. That courage isn't just for grand gestures. Sometimes it's a whispered word, a slipped note, a quiet act of defiance. And that treating people with dignity isn't just a nice idea. It's the foundation of any truly successful enterprise. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What hidden pleas for help are going unheard? What changes could happen if just one person dared to speak up and one person dared to listen?